So today I want to talk about what you can do to create the best workplace on earth. And by that, what I mean is that there are people out there, smart, talented, skilled, savvy people who have a choice of places to work, and they've got the skills that we need to be successful in the future. So the question is, will they work? Would they choose to work with you? So you might already have them in your teams, but are you doing the best that you can to keep them there? Or they might be outside your team, and are you doing the best that you can to attract them so that they'll come and work with you rather than going somewhere else? And this is one of my, it's something that I'm passionate about, creating the best workplace on earth. I've got a new conference keynote presentation around exactly this topic. I run in-house workshops for organizations about this, so how you create the best workplace on earth. And I even do some, especially at this time of the year when people are doing their strategic planning. So working with leadership teams to figure out what your workplace is like at the moment and what you need to do to create the best workplace on earth. So I mentioned those three things a little bit at the end, but today I want to make this webcast very much about you and give you a chance to assess your own workplace and determine whether you've got what it takes to create the best workplace on earth and also what you can do about it. If you complete the exit survey at the end of this webcast, then you'll also get, I'll send you a copy of my special report called The Best Workplace on Earth. In today's webcast, we're going through these 5 factors that Harvard has identified make up the best workplace on earth. And this special report goes through each of them in a little bit more detail. So what we're going to do today, broadly speaking, is we're going to do a self-assessment survey. Now, it's not just that. I'm not only going to ask you to answer these questions and rate yourself. We will do each of these 5 areas, and I'll explain what they are soon, but we're going to go through each of these 5 areas, and I'm going to give you the chance to assess how well your workplace stacks up. But because I want to give you as much reference material as possible, on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar control panel, in the Handout section, you can download this one-page handout, which is there for you for reference. You can download it, print it out, do it again later after this webcast, share it with your team members, pass it around, and it'll help you identify where your workplace is at. So we're going to go through that step by step in this webcast today, but you've got that as reference material. You don't need to download it now. You don't need it for the webcast, but please download it sometime before the webcast ends so that you've got it for future reference. Okay, so let's have a look at how the world has changed, because one of the big things that's happened is obviously there's a lot of change happening, but many leaders don't understand specifically why they're facing so much disruption. I just want to explain one big picture idea around how the world has changed. See, I reckon most organizations go through 3 types of growth, or 3 phases of their growth cycle. And this has always happened. It's just happening much faster now than ever before. So the first one is where you start your business, or your organization starts. And it may not be you who started it, but whoever started the organization, they saw that there was a problem to be solved. And let's say that there are these customers with these kind of square-shaped problems. And so you built a team, you built an organization with the people who can solve square-shaped problems. So you're striving, you're working really hard, your organization's growing because you're doing exactly what customers need to solve their problems. What happens though is over time, sometimes the customer problems change. So you still have those customers with those square-shaped problems, but you also have different customers or the same customers who've got different problems now. So the world's changed around you and you're still trying to survive with those original skills, the people with those original skills. And it's becoming harder now. So growth is slowing down. And you may, as I'm saying this, you may recognize yourself in this situation that things that used to be easy, customers used to come to you, they used to be really happy. It was easy to attract people to work with you because they were doing work that mattered and they were helping customers solve their problems or achieve their goals. And you may be finding this a bit harder now. And the reason is not that you've got dumber. It's not necessarily that you've added a whole bunch of layers of management and bureaucracy and paperwork. That could be part of it. But the real problem is that you're no longer solving the problems that the world needs solved anymore. If you want to thrive, when the world is now going to look at very, very different problem set, then what you need are people with the skills to be able to solve that new kind of problem. So we've gone from these square-shaped problems to these round-shaped problems, and if you don't have the people with those skills, then it's going to be a real struggle for you, because you're going to be trying to fit square pegs in round holes, and that's just not going to work in the future. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need new people, but it could mean that you need, well, it definitely needs, it means that you need new skills. So it could mean that you need your people to acquire these new skills, or sometimes you do need new people with those skills. And those people are out there. There's no question of it. Those people are out there. The skills are out there. It's just a question of whether they want to work with you anymore. So this is happening in many, many industries. So I'd like to think about how the world has changed for you. So for example, for me, in terms of what I do in delivering keynote presentations at conferences, the whole conference market has changed. It used to be the conference, the national conference used to be the place that people used to go, the one time that everyone could get together and share ideas. Now, it may be still the one time in their calendar that people get together in person and share some time, physical time together, but it's not necessarily the time they get together to share ideas or to learn information, because they can get information other ways. They can share ideas through virtual means, through teleconference calls and video calls throughout the year. So the purpose of the conference has changed. So as a conference speaker, I'm now solving a different problem. I wonder what that's like for you. So let's do our first little bit of interaction. So what's changed for you? So I'm going to ask you to switch over from the webinar window to your web browser. And if you go to askgehan.com and type in there what has changed for you. So let me do the same so you can see how this works. So let me just switch over now to my... So I've gone to askgehan.com, and you'll see that coming up on the screen now. I ran a similar webinar a couple of months ago, so I've kept the same answers that people have shared there. So what you do is you click on the little pink button down here, and then you can type in, I don't want your name because you can keep this anonymous, but give your business or the industry that you're in, and then what's changed for you. So what problems that you used to solve have now changed. So somebody from HR, the last time I ran this, said that people want to work from home sometimes. So that's one of the things that's changed in terms of what HR did. Okay, I can see people starting to answer here. Let's see what else we had from last time. Oh, someone in the events industry. Customers want more efficient responses and quicker access to information. Okay, great. I can see people responding here. So let's see what's coming in. Yeah, FMCG, and in fact, in many industries, mental health is a really important issue. I was doing some work for resource companies recently, and a big part of it, like these are companies that go offshore and they do offshore drilling, and mental health is a really big issue, as is safety. But this is true in many industries. Okay, great to see so many people responding in so quickly as well. So HR technology, so the clientele are changing. Interested to know what that is. Yeah, 24 hours a day demand, diversity. Good, we're going to talk about diversity soon. Somebody else in HR saying people are less interested in the 9 to 5. That's one of the biggest shifts that's coming in 2019, the idea of flexible work and flexible, it may be that they may be working from home, but also flexible working hours. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for sharing. So that window will be, I'm switching back to my webcast window now, but I'll leave that page open. If you want to take a snapshot of that page sometime during the webcast, you're welcome to do that. Okay, so one of the things that I share in many of my keynotes is some research from Gallup about what employees want from their workplace. And I suggest that you don't necessarily take much note of this, because these are things like super, job security, good holidays. So this is what Gallup said when they surveyed people a generation ago. And what employees want from their workplace now has changed. And Harvard did some research much more recently where they looked at, and what they call this the best workplace on earth, the top 5 things things that employees are looking for now from their workplace. These are the best employees. Obviously, people have different requirements and different desires from work, but what are the star employees, the top talent? What are they looking for from the workplace? Because they've got a choice of places to work now. So these are the 5 things that Harvard identified as the things that make up the best workplace on earth. And this is actually what we're going to go through for the rest of the webcast. And number 1 is about identity or diversity. So let me be myself. And a workplace is now made up of diversity, not just people who are the right fit or the best fit. The next one is give me information to get stuff done, but also give me the authority to actually get stuff done. So the next one is about talent. And it's about discovering and magnifying my strengths. And it's not just about training people, but also getting more out of the talent that you've already got. And the next one is about moving beyond what everyone's talking about, employee engagement. And well, engagement happens automatically when you've got work that's meaningful, not just menial. And the last one is that people say, look, we know we need checklists and systems and processes and templates. That'll help us do our job, but don't get in the way with stupid rules. So these are the 5 things that we're going to go through today. So we're going to look at diversity, authority, talent, meaning, and good judgment. So let people use their judgment rather than always having to slavishly follow the rules. Okay, so we're going to have quite a bit of engagement. We're going to have quite a few things like polls coming up. So I'm going to, if you haven't used a polling technology here before, let's do that. So the way the polls work is you get the chance to do them online. They are anonymous. And it's just simple multiple choice questions. Okay, so let's start with a little quick test question. This is for 0 points if this was a competition. So let's do the first question here. All right, so this is just a quick test question. So in which of Captain Cook's 3 Pacific voyages was he killed? All right, so the way you answer the poll is I'm going to show the poll on the screen here. This is just a bit of a fun one. And you see the poll online now, and just choose one of the 4 answers there. On which of Captain Cook's 3 Pacific voyages was he killed? And I can see how people are responding. Good, thank you for that. Let me close the poll results, poll and share the results. Okay, I think there's some joke answers there. If there weren't jokes, then I'm a bit worried for you. But yeah, so you can see how the poll works, right? Nice and simple, very easy to do these polls. Let's do a real one. This is based around workplaces, and what people are looking for from their workplace. Okay, so the next poll is this one here. So what would Australian workers be most willing to accept a pay cut for? So this is a very recent survey that was done of Australian businesses. You might have some idea already in your head. Let me share with you the top 4 responses, and I'd like you to tell me which of those 4 was the one that was the most popular. I've listed them here in alphabetical order, the top 4. Flexible working hours, more holidays, things like getting some travel expenses, or working from home. Okay, most people have responded. So let me close the poll and share the results. And actually, most people got this right. So that's really good. If they're HR people in the audience, you've got your finger on the pulse. If you're business owners or leaders, again, great. You've got your finger on the pulse. That was the number 1 response was flexible working hours. And yep, as I said, this is one of the things that is going to change workplaces in the future. Are you going to be able to manage that kind of flexibility in your workplace? So just in case you're interested in the actual numbers, the flexible working hours and then working from home, the 2 things that are around flexibility were the 2 top responses. I'm not going to talk a lot about flexibility and workplace flexibility in today's webcast. We might do that in a future webcast, but I did write an article for Smart Company late last year. So if you want to search at the Smart Company website for this article title that I submitted in November, a couple of months ago, you'll be able to read something around flexible work and what you can do to provide flexible work. It's particularly relevant now because the Productivity Commission has is going to bring in some new rules around that, which doesn't affect all workplaces, but it's made the topic really topical now, and that's worth considering for your workplace as well. Okay, so what we're going to do in the next half hour that we've got together is go through each of these 5 areas. So we're going to go through each of these 5 areas, and we're going to give you the chance to assess your own workplace around how well you are fitting this idea. So the first one we're going to look at is this idea of identity or diversity. So let me be myself. So we're going from workplaces where fit was the most important thing. So do you fit the job requirements? Do you fit the specification? Do you fit your role as defined by your manager and the project needs? To going to diversity. And it's not that fit isn't important. It's just that diversity is just as important now. And it used to be that all we cared about was, do we have somebody who was a good fit? And now we're saying that we need diversity in there as well. So here's how this is going to work. And we're going to do the same thing for each of these 5 areas. And if you've downloaded the handout, you'll see that these things are in there. If you haven't, that's okay. So here's what I'm going to get you to do. I'm going to stop talking for a minute very soon, and I'm going to ask you to rate yourself. Now, this is not online, so you can't click any buttons on this screen, but for each of these 5 questions, I'd like you to rate yourself from 0 to, well, you can see some of the questions are 2 and 3, some of them are 5. So the higher the number, the better. So let's look at this one here. So if you say we proactively embrace and encourage diversity, and you say, yep, we absolutely do that. All our recruitments around that. We make sure we interview for diversity. We actually look to create diversity, not just accept it or tolerate it, then you might rate yourself a 5. Okay, so you can do this in your head, or you can do this on a bit of paper. And what you'll find is that you'll get a score out of 20. And whatever the score is, that's your score for this area. We're going to do it 5 times. You're going to get a score out of 100 at the end. But I'm less interested in the total score out of 100. I'm more interested in, and I think you should be interested in, how you do out of 20 in each of these 5 areas. Okay, so I hope you've got this. Hope you've got the instructions clear. So I'm now going to give you a minute to work on this silently. There's nothing to click on the screen, so don't try to click any of the numbers. It's just for you to do privately. And once you've done it, when you've completed your section, then just raise your hand. So there's a little yellow hand button, and it'll give me an idea of how many people have responded. I'm going to give you a minute, but most people don't need the full minute for that. All right, so it's a minute starting now. Okay, I can see some hands raised, which is great. If you're raising your hand because you want to ask a question instead, then just type the question in the question box so I can tell the difference. Okay, wow, this group's quick. Okay, thank you for doing that. Let me just see if people have made comments and questions. Someone says I can't see the questions. I'm not sure why that happened. Most people seem to have got it. Finish, can't see how to raise my hand. There should be a little hand button on the control panel. If you can't raise it, if you don't get the chance to raise your hand, that's okay. I just want to get some indication of where people were. Okay, so I'm going to lower all the hands now. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do for yourself, you've got a score out of 20, and let's just see how we did. So remember that I'm going to show this as a poll. We won't do this for everyone, but we might do it for this one here. So from fit to diversity, how do you score? So you've got a score out of 20, and out of these, like, where do you score? And remember, this is anonymous, so you're not sharing your secrets with the rest of the group, but let's just see how people went there. Okay, most people have voted, so let me just share the results. Right, excellent. So really good to see that most people think that they're doing pretty well when it comes to diversity. And that's good. That's fantastic because diversity is one of the most useful things that you can have, like having diverse thinking in your team. And it's that's what I mean by diversity. And diversity is not only about diversity of ethnic or age or sex or sexual preference or some of those obvious overt diversity characteristics, but it's also about thinking and diversity of thinking. Let me show you before we move on to the next one, because this is not going to be only going through a whole bunch of polls, but I'll give you some other information as well. Some research that was done very recently here in Australia by Suncorp. Let me share this with you on the screen. In fact, we'll do this one as a survey as well, a very quick survey as a poll. So the Inclusion at Work Index looked at what organizations and teams are like when they have inclusive teams. So where they actually embrace diversity. So not just tolerate it and accept it, but they embrace diversity. So I'm just going to run this here as a poll. It's some real results. So let's see. You can tick more than one box with this one. So I'm changing the poll format slightly. So the Inclusion at Work Index says that employees in inclusive teams are which one of these? And you can tick more than one for this one. Okay, so they're more likely to innovate, more likely to be highly effective, more likely to stay, and or more likely to be very satisfied. And then don't worry too much about whether it's 9 times, 10 times, 4 times, or 19 times. It's actually like in all of them, it's like a lot. Okay, thank you everyone for voting quickly. Okay, so let me share the results and see what. Okay, so actually it's interesting there that most people, you thought that they were pretty equally shared among all those 4 results, and actually that was the case. So the Suncorp survey said for all of them, in fact, all of those 4 things were true. So if you have an inclusive team, then you're likely to have benefits in lots and lots of different areas. So that's why diversity and inclusion are such an important part of effective teams now and being fit for the future. Okay, so let's do the same for the other 4 areas. So the second one is around authority. So help me get stuff done. So give me the information that I need, but also give me the authority to act on that information without always having to come back to you, you as a manager, for approval. Because the old way that delegation used to work was if you were a good leader or good manager, you would delegate, and you delegate by giving people information and give them some parameters around which they can work. And then you say, if unexpected information comes along, then come back to me and we can figure it out together. That's just too slow now. You can't do that. You have to be able to delegate more authority now and trust people with exercising good judgment when they have to do things and they've got the authority to do it. And you still have to have some accountability for it as well, as do they. Okay, so we're going from just information to information plus authority. So here's a survey again. This part of the survey, again, 5 questions. Just do it privately, pen and paper, in your head, whatever you like. Give yourself a score out of 20. I'll give you a minute to do that now. And raise your hand when you've done it, please. And just a hint, if you've downloaded a handout, and you'll see all the questions on there, so you may even be rushing ahead and doing all 5 sections, which is great. That you're welcome to do that. Okay, this one may have been a little bit harder because the hands weren't going up as quickly. A question that invariably comes up when I present this survey is why some of the questions are out of 2 and 3 and some of the others are out of 5. The reason is the first couple of questions are kind of like the price of entry now. So we give people information they need to do their job. Yeah, you should do that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're building the best workplace on earth. So I'm hoping that you're scoring high on these first couple of questions, but what really matters is that you score high on these last 3. And you'll find that in each of these 5 areas, they're grouped that way. So the first couple of questions are just kind of getting started. You should be there, and I hope you are. But the things that really matter are how you score on these last 3. So that's why there's a bulk of the points in those last 3. Okay, let me do the second poll and just see what you thought or how you scored in that area. We won't do the public poll for each of the 5, but let's do it for the first couple. Okay, curious to know how you scored. Well, thank you for responding quickly. Okay, wow, that's really quick. Okay, let me share the results there. Because I usually stop the poll when 80% of people have responded, and that happened very quickly. So great. Okay, so again, I'm really pleased that people are scoring high in this area. And when we do the last one, which is around good judgment, if you didn't score high in this area, then authority and good judgment go together. So we will talk about that. By the way, the other thing is that if you didn't score high in this area, then there's a book that I highly recommend that you read. It's called Turn the Ship Around. And so this is one of the books that I recommend to people when they're looking at what do we need to do to provide more authority to people without being reckless about it, because you can't just give your people authority and say go off and do the work, because that's reckless and negligent. But you need to have some way of giving them authority so that they can do work without having to come back to you all the time. And David Marquette talks about this. He was a commander of a US submarine, and he's based on his own experience in leadership, which he's now turned into this book, and he's now on the speaking circuit in the US. And one of his principles is this: push authority to information. So the people with the information, generally the frontline people, or lower down, if you think of the traditional hierarchy, lower down that hierarchy, they're the people with the information. So rather than the old way of managing and leading was to push information to authority. When somebody gets some information, they push it up the chain until somebody senior enough can act on that information. So Marquette's idea was the opposite. He says push authority down to information so that the people who've got the information can act on it. Okay, and if you don't like the term push authority down, it's not necessarily down, it's pushing it out to the people who've got the information, but down in terms of that old traditional hierarchy. So if this is one of your challenges that you're facing in your organization, that people don't take authority or leaders don't give authority, this is a really good book to read. Okay, let's move on to the third area. The third area is, this is one of my favorite areas, which is all about strengths and talent development. And it's moving from a predominantly training model to a talent development model. And I'm not saying training is bad, not in any way. Training is good. I run training programs. I work with lots of HR people who run training programs, lots of business owners who do that. But don't only look at training as the way to develop the talent of your people. In fact, I reckon you should turn it around, and rather than looking at the people as your people requiring skills, think about the skills that they already have and how you can bring them into the organization. So I reckon you should turn the tables on talent and do one simple thing, which is reverse mentoring. Among all the other talent development things you do, reverse mentoring is really, really powerful. So the traditional mentoring is where the more senior people share their experience, their judgment, their wisdom that they've acquired over the years with the more junior people. And when I ask in my programs how many people have mentoring programs in place, informal or formal, many people in my audiences put up their hand. But when I say how many people have reverse mentoring in place, very few people put up their hand. And reverse mentoring is where you do it the other way around. So the more junior people who have experience in different areas of like social media, consumer buying behaviors, the way that the world works now, what young people are looking for, what universities are teaching their graduates. They've got expertise in different areas, and maybe most importantly, they've got a different perspective on the world. And if you think about that original diagram I showed you with the round pegs into square holes or square pegs in round holes, the perspective of the more junior people may be more relevant to how the world is now than the more senior people who have maybe built up a bubble around themselves because of their different experiences. So what are you doing with reverse mentoring? So one of my clients, Janet Wilson, who's just retired actually as a CEO of Cooper Grace Ward Lawyers, she has this reverse mentoring program, or she had before she retired. So what she would do was, let's say every 3 months or so, she would have a reverse mentor. And this is somebody who was younger than her, and I'm using the word younger in inverted commas. So it may be somebody who actually was literally younger, so it may have been a young person. It may be somebody who was a recent graduate, so younger in terms of experience in the law, or it could have been somebody who was younger in the firm, so somebody who came in from outside and could bring in an outside perspective. So Janet would sit down with them every week or two and have a conversation. And the idea was for Janet to learn from them, not for her to share her experience with that mentoree or with that other person. So obviously it worked in both directions, but Janet found that the mentoring that she got from that other person, the more junior person, was very, very, very valuable. And she's not alone, but it's rare for the more senior people to say, excuse me, I've got somebody that maybe has a different perspective that I could find useful. Okay, so let's do this survey. So a minute again, here are the 5 questions around going from training to talent. It's not only about reverse mentoring, but you'll see there is a question about reverse mentoring there. Okay, it's the same system. I'll give you a minute to raise your hand when you've completed, and let's see what the score is. Okay, good. People are raising their hand quickly, so that's an easy one for you to assess. Great. Okay, fantastic. We won't do the poll for this one, but I will share with you one of my reverse mentors is my PA, Emma. So Emma is she's Gen Y, so I'm Gen X. Emma's a Gen Y, and when Emma first started working with me, so by the way, so Emma, she's my PA, but she doesn't know how to use Word or Excel. And you think, well, how could a PA work that way? But Emma knows how to use Google Docs and Google Sheets. And when we need to send stuff to people who only use Word and Excel, we can save a Google Doc as a Word document or a Google Sheet as an Excel spreadsheet. So it works fine. And just think about in your organization, if you could choose somebody who knows the old technology, which Word and Excel are still like old technology from the last 20 years, or you knew somebody who knew the new technology, which is cloud-based, collaborative, shared, this is the Google Docs, Google Sheets, and you had to choose which one you were going to go with. Well, which one would you go with? And I think I'd much rather have the Emma who's using the technology of the future rather than somebody who's competent with the technology of the past. Now, you might say it'd be great if you had both, and absolutely. And it's not that Em just can't open a Word document or can't open an Excel spreadsheet. It's just that this is where her skills naturally are. And I love that because it means that we are automatically thinking of collaborative shared documents and everything that goes along with that. So Emma lives in Perth just as I do, but we don't work together in the same office. So I work from home. She works from, well, I think she works from home. And so having somebody who understands that is really powerful. When Emma and I first started working together, she said to me, Gihan, you use a lot of email. And I said, yeah, like email's great because especially when we're not working together in the same office, email's a really useful thing that we can use to communicate. And she said, oh no, we should be using Slack and Trello. I said, okay, Em, I've heard of those things. I haven't used them much, but if you tell me how to use them, let's set them up and have a go with them. And so we do now. So we tried Slack and it didn't work out for us that well. It just wasn't a good fit for our work style. But Trello is fantastic. So Trello is like an online bulletin board, and almost all our communication that Emma and I do, that's the online communication, is done through Trello. So instead of us sending information, sending emails to each other and clogging up the email system, we use Trello, which is like an online bulletin board. So I'm not saying this because I think you should adopt Slack and Trello, but I'm saying this because I think you should adopt the philosophy that you've possibly got people in your organization who can teach you stuff and teach you really useful stuff if you're willing to learn from them. And there might be a little bit of the less traditional people that you would go to learn from, and there might be the people that you would rather teach. And I'm sure Emma would say that she learns a lot from me as well, but I also want to learn a lot from Emma. Okay, let's do another quick poll, but this one's around a survey that was done about women in leadership. And I'm just curious to know, I'm going to share the results of this with you in a minute, but let me do this as a poll first. So according to this organization, which surveyed a number of women in leadership, how many women are, sorry, not the report, it was a Women in Leadership report, but they surveyed women in organizations and said how many women are happy with the mentoring programs in their organizations. So formal or informal mentoring programs. Okay, let me launch this as a poll. So this is like a quiz question. So what do you reckon? Do you think it was less than 20% or fewer than 20%? Or in one of these other areas, 20 to 40, 40 to 60? I can tell you it definitely wasn't more than 80%. Okay, good. Most people have voted, so let me close and share the results. Probably not a surprise to most of you who actually said, yeah, so most people did say it was pretty low. So if you add up these first two, that's, 95% of people said that, yeah, it was less than 40%, which is actually right. That was actually the result that they found. So when this organization did their survey, and they said that only 16% of women said they were happy with the mentoring programs or the mentoring opportunities that their organization provided for them. It's not a gender thing though. When the men were not much better than that, only 21%. So 1 in 5 said they had great mentoring programs. I think there's a real opportunity here that whether you set up mentoring formally or informally, it's a really valuable thing that you can do. And I think it's one of those things that you can do independently of anybody else. So if you're in a leadership position, if you're a leader or a manager, then start mentoring people and start being mentored, especially with reverse mentoring. It doesn't matter whether there's a formal program in your organization. If you're a junior person, then look for a mentor, and then perhaps, if you're confident enough, offer mentoring as well. And you may need to start a little bit more informally and casually so that people don't feel threatened by it, but it's definitely worth doing. Okay, 2 more areas to go. So this one's about meaningful work. So moving from engagement. So instead of having to try to engineer employee engagement, how do you create work that's meaningful, which means that the engagement happens automatically? All right, you've got a minute. You know the drill. I'll leave you to it. Okay, wow, people are responding quickly. Thank you for that. Okay, thank you for that. So this is a big topic, and we could run a whole webcast on this, and in fact I do run a program on this. So how do you create a shared journey for people so that people feel like they're on they're on the journey with you. So it's one thing to have a salaried job where you're helping solve customer problems and helping customers achieve their goals. Great. Absolutely good. But that again is a price of entry now. The successful organizations and the teams which are part of that best workplace on earth are on a shared journey. So the organization has purpose, mission, values, and a purpose. So we won't go into this in a lot of detail. The question I would ask you is, as an organization, how are you changing the world? And you get to define what world is. So, and you get to define what change is. So it doesn't have to be the whole world, but you could say, how are you making a difference in your world? And that's the first step for you to then decide, for you to then build a workplace where you provide meaningful work for people. And we're not going to go through that in a lot of detail because, as I said, this is a really big topic, but it is definitely something that I think is worth thinking about. If you're in any sort of leadership position, how are you changing the world? Okay, the last one is the one around good judgment. And this is one, again, this is, I think, my favorite topic of the 5. Actually, I like the mentoring one as well. But how do you go from just providing rules to provide an environment where people exercise good judgment? Okay, let's do I see a question coming in. Let me just quickly check questions before we do this last one. Yeah, okay, a comment about mentoring, reverse mentoring. Thank you for that. So great. I'm glad that people like the reverse mentoring idea. Okay, let's do the last one. Okay, so we're going from providing rules. Now, rules by themselves aren't bad, but are you also allowing enough flexibility for people to exercise their judgment? Okay, I'll give you a minute to do that last one. Okay, again, thank you for responding quickly. Most people, I think, have responded already, and we only just passed halfway. I'll keep it going for the last 10 seconds now. Good, thank you for that. So that was the last one, and let me just tell you one story, which is actually, relatively speaking, an old story now, about Nordstrom, which is a retail store in the US. And one of the things they do is a very high focus on customer service, and like the customer's always right. But they also have this very high focus on their employees and employees exercising judgment. So when a new Nordstrom employee starts with the company, they get given an employee manual. And the employee manual says this: rule number 1, use your best judgment at all times. And then there are no other rules. Okay, so essentially that's what they're told they're allowed to do. They're saying, we're recruiting the best people. We trust you. We know that you'll use your judgment well. So this is our set of rules for you when you're faced with a particular situation. Now, from a legal viewpoint, they have to go a little bit further than that. So there are some other rules that go in there, but they make this up front and center. Their employees know that one of the things that company does is they trust us to use our judgment. And I wonder whether your organization is as broad as that and as willing to allow your employees to work that way. So Deloitte, in their latest Global Human Capital Trends report, one of the trends they identified for creating great workplaces is you have this, that organizations are shifting towards a model that empowers individuals to whatever. And this empowerment is the bit around judgment. So acquire experiences, explore new roles, and continue to reinvent themselves. And a big part of that is that they do it rather than the organization having to do it for them. And yet, when they asked people in organizations how effective the organization was at creating this this empowering experience for them, fewer than 50%, so only about 2 in 5, said, yes, my organization is doing that. So there is some work to be done, but again, I think that's really positive. If you're in an organization, if you're in a leadership role, a management role, an HR role, and you know there are these smart, talented people out there looking for this, and you know that most organizations aren't providing it, it's a real opportunity for you. Okay, so those are 5 things. So we talked about diversity, we talked about authority, talent, meaning, and good judgment. So they're the 5 things that make up the best workplace on earth. And by going through this today, I hope you've got some idea of where your workplace fits. Just a reminder again, if you haven't already got the handout, we've got a couple of minutes before we end the webcast, so now's the time to download it. And please take that handout, use it, share it, do it as often as you like, share it with your team members as well, ask them to do it, and see how their responses tally with yours. And if you'd like me to help you with this in this area, so there are 3 things that I do, which I mentioned briefly at the start. I do a conference keynote presentation around the best workplace on earth. So I know some of you on the webcast have had me in at your conferences speaking about being fit for the future. So this keynote is a little bit different because it's around about how you create the best workplace on earth, and also how you as an employee, even if you're not in a leadership position, can make sure that you're part of that and help to build that within your team as well. I also do in-house workshops, so that's happening quite a bit at the moment. It's typically a half-day workshop that helps you, for leaders, how do you build that best workplace on earth, and for employees, how do you become part of that, and how do you continue to let that grow? And as I said, if you want strategic planning for your leadership team around this, so where is your workplace now? How does it where are you now, and what do you need to do to get to that best workplace on earth, then please get in touch, have a chat. So all my contact details are at gihanperera.com. If you complete the exit survey coming up very soon as you leave this webinar, then you'll also get a link to download this Best Workplace on Earth, which is actually one section of my new book, Disruption by Design. So one of the 9 sections is about exactly this: how do you create the best workplace on earth? So thank you everyone for coming along. I always say to people, or often say to people before I finish any presentation, don't wait for the world to change around you. Don't wait for the world to quieten down. Don't wait for there to be a quiet time in your work. Don't wait for all the ducks to line up. The world won't wait for you. It won't stop for you. So start now. Start before you're ready. Thank you everyone for coming along. I hope you got some value from the webcast. If you've got any questions or comments, please get in touch with me. As you can see, you find all my contact details at gihanperera.com. And I wish you all the best in creating the best workplace on earth. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.